Black Rock, the playa, has always been a special place way before the coming of Burning Man. So, and it still holds a special meaning to us. In the sacred areas, we can see from the playa, you can look in every direction, and there are sacred mountains within hearing range. So it was always special to be out there.
Meet the people who make Burning Man happen.
Around the world.
The dreamers and doers.
The artists, freaks, and fools.
Burning Man Live.
So, way back in 1990, when we first got the crazy idea to move the Burning Man from San Francisco, where it was born, out to the Black Rock Desert, where it stands now, one of the big reasons that we chose this particular site was because it seemed empty. It seemed lifeless, void, middle of nowhere, right? And we used to describe it with words like that in all of our literature. We used words like wasteland, wilderness, vacant, empty. I remember a Black Rock Gazette headline that was "Welcome to Nowhere," as if it wasn't even a real place at all. And certainly not anyone's home, except, I don't know, maybe later there was the whole welcome home thing, but nowhere. Well, to be fair, to a city eye, the Great Basin country out there, it can look like a whole lot of nowhere. This is black sky country at night, one of the lowest population densities on the continent. And just as the scarcity of wildlife out on the playa is not true, it's belied by the richness, the fecundity of the surrounding hills, people have lived around the Black Rock Desert for like tens of thousands of years. They lived there long before it was a desert, when it was still one giant fertile lake bed. And the descendants of those people are still here among us. They still live on the same land. Maybe it's because we thought of the playa as a destination and everything else as a series of in-between places seen outside the car window. And honestly, we're not the first to fall for this con. To the Anglo-American mind, the whole Great Basin, all of Nevada, has traditionally been more about getting somewhere than actually being somewhere. First, getting to a new life on the Oregon Trail, and then to the big ka-ching of the California gold fields, and then the second ka-ching of the Nevada silver fields, and then maybe a ride on the Transcontinental Railroad with a whistle stop in Reno for a card game or a quickie divorce, or if you're Johnny Cash, to shoot a man just to watch him die. It was already 1844. Think about that. 1844. When John Fremont, the so-called pathfinder of the Old West, came through, making this seriously one of the very last, if not the very last, first contact in North America. We're talking 250 years after Jamestown, and most of a decade after the Cherokee had already been ethnically cleansed from their ancestral lands and driven down the Trail of Tears. So this Fremont guy, who named a lot of the things around here, he comes down to us through the ages as kind of a little popinjay, rather arrogant little fellow. He fancied himself a hero of manifest destiny. Now, to be fair, in his journals he writes pretty well of the people he found here, but he especially loved their fish. He just went on and on about the salmon trout that he declared the tastiest fish he may have ever eaten. Cool, but Jim, you got everything else wrong. He named the lake for one of its islands, a tufa formation that reminded him of woodcuts he's seen of the pyramids of Egypt. Of course, the lake already had a name for thousands of years, not Pyramid Lake, but the Kuyuipa. And the people who were so nice to him were not the Paviotso, as he wrote in his journals, but the Paiute, or more accurately, in their language, the Numa, which means simply the people. And they were part of a far-flung tribe that spanned the entire Great Basin, which I got to tell you was everything from California to Utah, from Oregon to Arizona. Connected, interrelated bands of hunter-gatherers living off this land since Western civilization was a gleam in the eye of some dirt farmer in the Indus River Valley, and still living here today.
At one time, this place was covered in trees, grass. a lot of water. It was way different than today. Way back when they had water, it was a place to gather fish, roots, and berries, willows to make baskets with.
Dean Barlese is a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, a spiritual leader on the reservation, and a longtime burner.
It will always be a special place, even before the Black Rock City came, Burning Man came. We would take my dad, my uncles out there. We'd do prayers out there because we knew the names of the people who survived out there, the ones that survived the massacres. I would explain to our people that's how our connection is to the land out there. In some of the teachings, the whirlwinds are the ancestors wandering, checking where they used to wander out again. It's not a bad thing.
Is it a blessing or is there
It's
significance?
kind of like a blessing. You just tell them, you guys go on. We're okay here.
After all those years of driving through Paiute country on the way to and from Burning Man, seeing the towns of Wadsworth and Nixon through the windows as a series of in-between places, I thought it was high time to go to the res instead of through it, devote some real time to talking to the people who live there, the Pyramid Lake Band of Paiutes. I wanted to understand their history, their culture, their hopes, their dreams, and I very much wanted to hear how the Burning Man community can be better neighbors to these people. So my producer Allie and I hit the road to find out more.
We figured that it really wasn't the kind of story you could do on a Zoom call, so we went on a road trip. And in the course of this episode, we're going to stop a few places on the reservation. We had super fascinating conversations that looked back to the ancient past and looked forwards to hopes and plans for the tribe's future. We also heard about interactions and feelings regarding Burning Man's impact on residents and on the roads of the res. At least some of you out there in Listenerland are queuing up this podcast as you drive to Black Rock City. Save this episode for the last leg of your playa drive. Switch it on when you make that turn onto Nevada State Route 447 and enter the ancestral land of the Pyramid Lake Paiute. We're riding right along with you.
Dateline, Nixon, Nevada. We're here at the Pyramid Lake Museum and Visitor Center, where we're going to meet with the director of the museum, Billie Jean Guerrero, to learn about the long history of the Paiute people who live in these parts.
Let's start at the beginning. I don't know how we fit 15,000 years of history into a 1-hour show, but that's about how long we know that people have been living in this area, right?
Yes, that's correct. So one of the ways that we can confirm that is with our petroglyphs that are here, and they're carbon dated at 14,800 years old. So that means that there were people around this area for at least that long.
So what are some of the other archaeological finds of interest of the people who were here?
Well, people, when the water was a lot higher, they lived in the caves. So over the years, there have been a lot of archaeological digs where they've been able to locate some of the food sources or basketry, also sandals made out of sagebrush or other materials.
So Pyramid Lake, I understand, is the last and deepest part of what used to be a very large lake in the Pleistocene, and I imagine the people have probably been living along that water since even longer.
Yes, so with the ancient Lake Lahontan, Pyramid Lake is the largest remnant of the ancient lake. Naturally, for survival, wherever there was water sources, that would be a place where people gathered, lived, and hunted and fished as well.
And it still is today.
Yes, it sure is.
The Pyramid Lake Reservation, tell me about how that was created or when.
It wasn't declared a reservation until 1874, and that was by President Ulysses S. Grant. And at that time, reservations in northern Nevada were established by executive order, which wasn't the ordinary thing. Normally, reservations had been established through treaty. And we're not a treaty tribe, but we are set up as executive order. What that means for us is that a president can come along and also diminish the tribe through executive order because it's a piece of paper. They write their name on there, and it could be very detrimental. And so for the Pyramid Lake Paiute, it's very important that we retain as much of our culture as we can, including the language, because that is our identity. In order to maintain as a tribal entity, then we need to also work on maintaining the culture.
Let's talk about a few of those words. I mean, the word Paiute is a word applied by other people to your people, right?
Yes, we normally refer to ourselves as the Numa, and that means the people, as in many tribes they refer their tribal in their own languages as the people. One of the stories or backgrounds that I've heard is that when settlers first came to this area, so in 1844 was our first contact with the non-Indian, John C. Fremont. He was the first non-Indian to come through this way, and after that there were a lot more settlers that came through, but normally people looking for water. And in the Paiute language, water is referred to as ba. We would say ba yut means water this way. Then that was interpreted to be as our name, ba yut or Paiute. That's how that evolved. And so that's what we're called as far as our tribal name in, I guess you would say English, but it's not even English.
In the larger world of the Numa, though, I understand different bands are associated with their primary food stuff.
So the Pyramid Lake Paiute here within this area, we refer to ourselves as the Kuyui Takata, meaning the fish eater. So the Kuyui is an ancient suckerfish only found here at Pyramid Lake. So as our primary food source, then we're named after the fish, and obviously we're the fish eaters. Further south, where the Walker River Paiute tribe is, they're referred to as the Agai Takata. And Agai is the Lahontan cutthroat trout. Well, we have both fish here, the Kuyui and Agai. But some of the other tribes in the local area, again, named after some of their food sources, they might be called Kamu Takata, meaning the rabbit eaters. The Doi Takata are the tule eaters. They may be named after animals that they eat, or could be plants and seeds that they're familiar with eating as well.
The Numa language is under serious threat with only about 20 surviving fluent speakers. But Billie Jean is part of the effort to keep the language alive. She's even taking Numa classes herself. Yay. We asked her to teach us a few words.
In the Numa language, there's a lot of important words, and that's one of the areas that we're really working on is, creating fluent speakers. So as students, which we're all pretty much students still learning more of the language, try to be more conversant in the language and being able to hold conversation with somebody. So it's a whole learning process, and we do have active classes.
So how do I say hello?
Hello, generally we'll say ha'u, and it's adapted after the English language. So traditionally, greeting somebody, you would ask something more intimate about where they came from or what they might be doing. But nowadays, we just say ha'u, meaning how are you?
How about thank you?
Thank you, we say pisha you. Anytime we say pisha is a very positive word and reflecting, good feelings. So pisha is good.
Was a lot of the language lost during the era of the boarding schools?
I would say yes. That's probably the primary area where we lost language, because in the boarding school era, children were taken from their homes and taken to a boarding school where they would reside full time. Children would be as young as 5 years old, and they were discouraged from practicing any of the culture, including speaking the language. So in some boarding schools, they were very, very strict, where they would punish the children for speaking the language, which in turn discouraged people from wanting to speak, let alone teaching their children to speak the language. So the boarding schools were a big part in the loss of language.
Where were the children from here taken?
My dad went to school at boarding school, as well as my aunts. My oldest aunt, she ran away about 3 times, and after that, then they quit sending her back. Other children, they travel long distance to go from the school to get back home. I think in this area, the weather would allow that, but further north, like in Canada and up in those cold regions, the children didn't always make it home.
Billie Jean also told us the Numa name for the pyramid in the lake's current day name.
So we call the pyramid Wono, which to us is a burden basket, but if you turn it upside down, because it's a cone shape, it looks like what is out there now. But Fremont, with the pyramid shape, it reminded him of the pyramids of Egypt. So that's how that name stuck there.
Are there other names of places, like towns in this area, that come from the Numa? Like Winnemucca, or any other names that people might not realize are associated with your tribe?
Yeah, like you mentioned, Winnemucca derives from the Paiute language or the Numa language. Truckee definitely is a Paiute name, and other places would be included as well.
I read that Truckee was the guide who showed Fremont where the pass was to get over the Sierras, and that he named the river after him and the pass.
Okay. Yeah, so early contact with the non-Indian, and of course Fremont and his expedition party, they were treated very well by the Paiutes, and he was fed, and he loved the taste of the fish here, the trout, because it reminded him of salmon. It was very positive when they came here, and the old leaders at that time wanted to maintain peace, so they became very friendly with Fremont. And as he was exploring further west and finding ways to get over the Sierra Mountains, he used the Paiutes from here to help lead them over the hill. So not only Truckee, but Pancho and others even fought in the Mexican War with Fremont.
Oh, wow.
And they were given medals, gold medals. When Truckee passed away, and his medal, he made it very well known that he wanted to be buried with that medal, and so they buried him with it. Pancho's medal we actually had here on display in the museum as a loaned item from the Pancho family, which was quite interesting.
So intercultural relations seemed to go pretty well for a while, but then not so well.
Yeah, so in 1860, there were 2 Paiute girls that went missing from here. Of course, everybody was out wanting to find them, including the family, but there was a trading post called William Station south of here. That's where they were, but they would not admit that the girls were there. They were hidden away. But when somebody had gone over, they heard the little girls down in a basement area, and it was discovered that they were there. Well, what happened was the William Station got burned down and some of the people were killed, and that created a panic from the people at Virginia City, so they formed a volunteer army and came out here in May of 1860. That was our first battle. They were defeated. They were led by Major Ormsby, but they were not trained, so They lost when the few that returned again created a panic. And within a few weeks, in June of 1860, an organized army came through. And they were held off so that the women, children, and elders could escape north. It was pretty much a draw. But, considering we had regiments from California, and they were about 600 strong, we still had more manpower than they did.
The tale of the girls disappearing reminds me of Some Stories Never Change. Girls still disappear.
That's a current issue. So one of the things, besides our historical information that we share with visitors, we have contemporary issues such as missing and murdered Indigenous people. We do bring awareness on May 5th of every year, which is Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Awareness Day. We have a march coming from our local high school, and then we march all the way around on the highway and come back to the museum. And we get about anywhere from 100 to 200 people coming out because we have a number of families that do have missing relatives. We have people here that have murdered relatives as well. And some of the cases have received justice, whereas other cases, they have not held anybody accountable.
The Paiute people have suffered a lot and had a lot of hardship. And also, the Paiute people are forerunners and precedent setters in retaining water rights. And so, nonetheless, have had some major successes. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, we've always been active in protecting our water because Pyramid Lake is a very spiritual lake. And we use it, for our healing and wellness. But wherever you go, especially in a desert environment, water is so precious. And a lot of that has to do with our fishery, with the kuyui and the trout, because that's our food source and that's our namesake. It's our interest to protect the water as much as we can for future generations. And when you consider how high the lake used to be, in fact, it had an overflow to a sister lake called the Winnemucca Lake, also known as Mud Lake. So we weren't just one lake, we were two lakes here. And the Winnemucca Lake was another really important food source because that's where the waterfowl would be found. That lake dried up about 1935. So after Derby Dam was built, within 35 years, it completely dried up. Now we have Pyramid Lake left, and the water continually goes down. And through litigation and various negotiations, we've always maintained that we need that water for the fishery. It's an important feat, for our ancestors who always maintained to never sell the water and to, do what we can to fight for it. So over the years, we've been through a lot of court cases, a lot of precedents that have been made, and finally to a point of being able to sit down at the table with all the major players and being able to negotiate an agreement where, water can be stored in reservoirs upriver so that in drought years, there'll be something to flow to the lake specifically for the fish. It's taken a lot, but the tribe's been fortunate in that we've had good attorneys. We've had a good water team with engineers and people that fought for the interests of the tribe. So it's been quite a feat.
What do people passing through need to know about being respectful of the lake?
I think, first of all, recognizing that we acknowledge the lake as a very spiritual lake. It's a living water, and when we talk about respect to the water, we acknowledge our relationship to the water through a prayer. So like when we go to the water, making sure we bless ourselves, wash ourselves off, and then we even talk to the water, asking for a good blessing for our health and wellness and for our relatives, those that might not be feeling good. Other people can do that as well.
You may be laboring under the impression that Burning Man participants are the only people who come out this way, but Billie Jean corrected us on that.
We get a lot of international visitors, so we've had groups here from Africa. I think that's really the most rewarding thing for me, is to connect with other people, because other Indigenous people, we find that we have a lot of commonalities, especially with basket work, because they'll look around, they'll say, hey, we have these at our home too. It's good to make those connections that as human beings, we all have a role and responsibility in protecting the earth, the water, the land, and just having common respect for everyone. We're more in common than we are different, and we all need to come together and work together to change what's going on with the earth so that we don't have all the disasters that are happening. We need to get that balance back, and it will benefit everybody.
Relationships between the tribe and the Burning Man community are developing slowly, but healthily, steadily, and showing up in some interesting collaborations. When the Land Art Generator Initiative, LAGGY, which you've heard about on this program before, when they held their design competition at Fly Ranch a couple of years ago, one of their winning teams, the Ripple team, collaborated with the museum on an amazing project that Billie Jean told us more about.
The Ripple team was responsible for designing a sustainability plan for Fly Ranch, which is property acquired by Burning Man. And they helped us install the garden. They did the research as far as what native plants should be put in there. And we started out with our first phase of mountain plants. Our next phase will be desert plants, and our final phase will be wetland plants. So they've been very instrumental in helping us through that collaboration. And then when we wanted to build a haba, a shade, the Burners Without Borders actually funded that to be able to build the traditional shade, the haba, along with putting some picnic tables in there so that our visitors can sit and enjoy the medicine garden and sit and have lunch. It's been a wonderful addition to the museum.
Yeah, the shade is definitely a shared interest.
Yes,
Anyone who lives out here, right? Yeah, the habaz is beautiful. It actually reminds me a little bit of basket weaving, the way the top is put together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those are willows on top.
Okay.
So we need to get some more, and so we need more volunteers.
If you were to give advice to all of the burners who are passing through town, if you had their ear, you have their ear, what do you want to say to them?
Well, be safe when you're coming through. Follow the rules of the tribe so you don't get stopped, for one. Just be friendly coming through, knowing that, this is an area that we love and we want to take care of, and we want our visitors to take care of it too. And come visit the museum.
Okay.
So if you have never stopped at the Pyramid Lake Visitor Center and Museum, it's a must.
Definitely agree. Big +1. And the museum gift shop has beautiful handiwork and crafts made by members of the tribe. So if you want to do some shopping there, that's another way to support the Pyramid Lake Paiute.
The museum, it's in a super distinctive and beautiful building designed by the Native American architect Dennis Numa. It is right off Highway 447 next to the high school with, you got to notice that giant solar array installed by our friends BlackRock Solar. And remember what Billie Jean said about needing help with the medicine garden and the haba? Check the show notes for more information about volunteering possibilities. Our next stop is on the west side of the lake, a 20-minute drive from Nixon, the little waterside community of Sutcliffe, Nevada. We are still on the reservation, but there's a very different vibe here, far from the interstate with fantastic views of the water. We're here to meet with Mervin Wright, the tribe's director of fisheries, to learn more about the lake and its ecology. Mervin is a former tribal chairman and a fierce advocate for the lake and the life it holds. The kui that gave the people their name, and the agai, or Lahontan cutthroat trout, which is a magnet for anglers and, incidentally, Nevada's state fish. Mervin is an extremely knowledgeable guy. He's got a master's in hydrology And he talked at length about the complexities of water rights, federal government oversight, species management, and the guy was not pulling any punches in his critiques.
He was also kind enough to show us around the fishery and orient us to the lake.
When you drive around Marble Bluff, you'll see those watermarks at the top, those terraces. And you see that all around here. You probably see it out there in the Black Rock too. You'll see those terraces up at these levels. That was the ancient lake, the Sihu High Stand, they call it. A food web study has been conducted. Utah State University has been conducting this population surveys. We do water quality samples. We do take a sample of the microorganisms, the plankton, try to identify the prevalence of what we're seeing in the water column. The health of the lake is good. So our operation, we've been raising fish, we've been producing trout since 1982. It's over 50 years we've been raising fish here. And we have introduced cutthroat trout from Summit Lake and from other lakes, but they have evolved and adapted and adjusted to this system, becoming Pyramid Lake cutthroat trout. We can produce over 1 million cutthroat trout and stock them into the lake. However, once we started looking at the food web, we don't want to overstock cutthroats into the lake and offset that balance of the food web. So the food web study is critically important with what we do with production. The target we have today is a target that's based on maintaining the balance of our food web in the lake. Anglers were complaining at the conclusion of the fishing season that the fish weren't hitting, the fish weren't biting. I mean, the fish were swimming right by their lures as they're looking at them in the water. And a part of that is saying, okay, then there must be enough food out there for them to not be hungry to hit those lures and flies or whatever they're fishing, using to fish. So the economy, or the revenue strain that the tribe receives, is based on our production, is based on the production of the lake. We want full access to the river for our fish, no restrictions. I mean, that natural reproduction is the goal, is basically something that we want to see happen every year. And again, they were here before us. They should have access to the river. Who are we as human beings to stop that?
So what do you think, or in your estimation, what do you feel the main mission is of the fishery in Pyramid Lake? Well,
it's about sustaining our fishery population. It's both the koi fish, the cutthroat trout, the tui chub, and I only say those 3 fish species. Those are the natural. Now we have perch and carp, and there's some channel catfish that tend to be here, mostly at the mouth, at the delta. Our goal is to sustain a fishery, that's manageable, that is going to complement the food web and be maintained to a point where the survival of the fish species is one that is going to take monitoring versus management. So we can monitor the health of the lake based on the natural reproduction. So that's the goal. There's the pyramid. Okay, so you see that white line right there on that rock formation? That's the 80-foot decline from when Newland's project was constructed. Now the higher terrace I was telling you about, you can see it here, right? About mid-range in the mountain, you can see that terrace right there.
So that's like the 900-foot line when the full lake was full?
That's
30,000 years ago?
10,000.
Okay.
And you can see it all the way, wherever you look at the hillside, you can see that terrace, And when you come up around Marble Bluff, you can see it right at the top. That's where the high level of Lake Lahontan, or ancient lake, the Sihu High Stand, that's where that was at.
And from where we are, where's the stone mother?
It's just to the right of the pyramid in that rock formation down there. Yeah.
And what about this big island?
Anaho Island?
That's where the pelicans go?
A lot of them do, yeah. There's a nesting area out there. Yeah, that's probably where they're at now. If not, flying around down towards Stillwater too. What happened, through this 10,000 year period About 8,000 years ago, there was a huge seismic event, strike slip. The east side went north and the west side went south. And when that happened, that's when the Truckee River turned north in Wadsworth. It used to flow out into the Carson Sink, as did the Walker. But when it happened, the Walker turned east and the Truckee turned north. And so the water levels then were causing the river to shift and turn. So, 6,000 years later, here we are with the elevations where they are.
So while we were in Sutcliffe, we got a chance to visit with another former chairman of the tribe. His name is James Phoenix. He's a retired cop. He's an ex-Marine and a pretty lovely fella.
James is charming and very friendly. He actually jumped right in and started interviewing us.
Have you seen the ups and downs from the beginning to where you're at today, or how's it going for you as far as that goes?
We did eventually get around to asking him some questions, starting with getting him to help us understand what he sees as the big challenges facing the tribe and how the Burning Man community can help.
It's tough to maintain the state highway plus our own highways. Some of our communities here just don't have a lot of money to maintain as you would if you're in town somewhere, in Reno or something like that. So it makes it rough like that. And then we're so far away. It's not like a 10-minute drive and here you are, you can go to work. Some of them, they have to drive all the way to Carson or have to drive to Reno or have to go to Furley. And it's kind of wear and tear on the ride, It makes it tough to survive as far as trying to get ahead like you would. So if you just take this community here, it's relying a lot on grants and funding in our federal government. So, it kind of restricts us, but it also helps us. But we're really trying to improve upon that so that we can kind of be like a county of our own. Government has set us up like that, but we haven't been able to get over the hump to move that forward. Some reservations have done great because they have external revenue coming in, such as, a casino where they make millions, and they can support social services programs. They can support victim services programs. Whereas some tribes, not just us, other 28 tribes in Nevada are even worse off than we are. And they rely on the federal government to provide them with funding, and it's limited and it's restricted, and we don't have much to deal with. A lot of, like myself, I was from that generation where I went away to go and work and leave the reservation, and my dad and mom stayed here. I went away to do all that, to pursue a career and do all those things, and then I come back and I'm here to give. But it's a lot of the generations are not going to stick around because they got to go to town to work. To work here on the res, as we call it, you don't make a lot of money. And the cost of living isn't a whole lot, but still, it's pretty rough. You kind of get bogged down. You got to try to fight through that to look forward, and it's not easy, because some folks don't, it's challenging for them as a whole. There's a few that'll rise to the top, but there's a few others that they're pretty much done, and this is tough here for them. But they love living out here, and they love to claim this as their own, because as Native people, we're very proud, and this is our home, and we're very proud of that. There's those challenges that come along economically. We just haven't been, this tribe, I can say as a chairman, we just haven't been able to get over the top to bring in some external revenue to help support our programs. That's the challenge. That's why, if the Burning Man community decides to help support some of our programs, that's a big win. And that's was something that one of the participants she brought up yesterday, she was talking about, if there's some of the communities, and the communities, the camps, I guess what they're called, are wanting to help donate to tribes, specifically our tribe, or even Gerlach is the same way, more than helpful because there's not a lot of money, a lot of funds that come in to support there. So that makes it tough.
What are some good places where Burning Man participants could donate? I think a lot of people don't know. I donate to the food bank.
Yeah, there's a food bank for people. You talked to Mervin already, so his program is hurting for certain because he relies on a grant that, the interest, and he tries to operate fisheries, and there's not a lot. He's just barely scraping by. So donating to the fisheries program for science and research is a real big, huge deal. The other is just like any other township. You know, you have victim services, you have domestic violence, you have social services, the clinic. You know, there's other places that you could contribute to each and one of those programs that are in need and, you know, help the tribe continue to thrive.
And it's possible to donate to all of these?
Yes, you know, just have to get with the tribe. The administration, it's a way forward for them. They kind of puts it in their hand that we need to do something because someone wants to contribute to help the tribe.
The Burning Man organization has...
Yes, they have. They help support for lake maintenance, and then they help support the police department and EMS. So they help do that quite a bit. So this is what everybody think if you really want to do something.
That's great. And as Ali said, a lot of our community members want to.
Absolutely. And the museum, again, you know, we want to expand that thing. We want to make it, you've been down there, right? Yeah. And so, again, it's already cluttered. It's tight. They have that property over there so they can make it bigger and better.
We also asked James to tell us about his hopes and aspirations for the future of the tribe. He is a man with a vision.
I envision us trying to have some type of external revenue that can bring in some funds, you know, besides grants, because we just lived off grants for all these years. So moving forward, you ask me, we're having some economic development that can create good source of funds, and then it's sustainable now and pretty much forever, you know, and it's there. We just have to be able to turn that over and make that happen, and we haven't been able to get over that hump yet, you know, because once we can get past that and see it coming, then all the other things start to happen. You learn how to handle the big money. You learn how to handle the organizations. You learn how to handle those big negotiations. You learn how to work it. And then you start bringing your people back and educating them, and they start to get involved and they start learning, and then generations that come. You can see the same model in some other reservations. One good one is the Cherokee Eastern Band in North Carolina, the Great Smoky Mountains there. They are a good example historically how they started and where they're going. They have their casino that really brings in a lot of funds, but they've been able to use that to create programs just like their own little township. And that's the ultimate goal here.
James's vision for the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe does not involve a casino. It's all about the Wadsworth bypass. Now, this is a project that would move Interstate 80 traffic to good old State Route 447, skipping the Wadsworth Township and the school crossings and all of the complications of traffic there, and also creating a new commercial or industrial corridor on that little spur. He went on to explain how it could be a game changer for the tribe.
So in the future, that's where the Burning Man traffic will go instead of passing through the township of Wadsworth.
So more development down towards 80 where the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
I think ideally everyone would say, let's just leave this alone over here on this west side of the lake, and then leave the north and the east side alone. We want to leave those nice areas alone. We want to have fishing. We want to have some recreation and beaching and things like that. But we don't want to make it so commercial where it's out of control and we're having a bunch of things happening. But down south, let's have it. There's property there, and it's just a matter of making that commitment. So one of the things that I saw was how busy the highway is. The Interstate 80 corridors is flooded with traffic during that time period. And good old 447, you know, it's not well maintained. And it gets a ton of traffic. It's flooded. People, they get kind of bent about that, you know, because it's that time again. Here they come. They're going to be vendors over at the smoke shop. There's going to be vendors over here. We're going to have a car wash over there. And cars are going to keep coming and coming and coming. And then they're going to get where they're going. And then the mass exodus, here they come. And then it's going to flood for X number of hours. And then that'll be that. So it's really just, you know, it has this cause and effect like in any community, even in Reno. You know, we used to say when the burners come to town, you know, they're coming to town, you know, and they're going to hit Wally and they're going to grab water. They're going to do this. They're going to park that. They're going to leave this RV there. And I used to do all that stuff. And I was just like, oh, my goodness, you know, so can you just take it with you, you know? So last year, the message was really work on your debris, you know, tie everything down. Please drive the speed limit. You know, don't be in a hurry. You're going to get there. slow it down, okay, on the way back, be respectful when you come through here, through Nixon, because, it's a quick jump and slow down, man, And then the workers have to modify their schedule. So at the clinic, they have to modify their schedule for patients that are coming in during that time period. So it just has its cause and effect, and the traffic is pretty busy. And those are in Nixon and Wadsworth. It's like, okay, we're getting ready. Here we go. So they're going to just kind of endure what's happening. And so you just do the best you can to try to be respectful and do what you can to do what's right. And as you all know, planning is the most important thing. And then the execution of it. And then seeing what you did wrong and try to do it better.
We left our chat with James having learned a ton. And we did end the interview with what became our signature kicker question.
I like to imagine that a lot of people are going to be listening to the show as they're driving to or from the event. So if you got a captive audience of burners in a car, is there anything else you want to tell them?
So, hey, burners in a car, when you're on your way headed to Reno, Nevada, just think about the historical Reno, Nevada first, as you're passing through on the highway. Don't just pass through the town. Think about, let me look up Reno, Nevada, get on the phone. Oh, yeah. What happened in Reno, Nevada? Let's do some trivia about what happened. Who fought here back in 1929? Okay, what happened here? Okay, blah, blah, blah. All right, now we're coming to historical Wadsworth, Nevada. Woohoo! All right, we just passed through there. Here's a smoke shop, and then you're just having some dialogue and not just listening to the music yourselves, and you're taking the opportunity to kind of expand your knowledge and history of the Great Basin area as you're passing through. And then think about the Paiute people. And then think about the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, which is in Reno. Think about the reservation itself, and think about the battle at Pyramid Lake. You can look it up. You can find it on a wiki. You can listen to it on a YouTube video. And as you pass by, you go, holy cow, that happened right there. Same with going through the museum. You want to pass by, get some donations in there. Go ahead. Thinking about it. You asked me what to think about, on your way there. Yeah. And more importantly, you're being respectful to the Great Basin, period. Not just us, but everybody. To me, when you're passing through somebody's house, you want to be kind and be polite and ask permission. So please do the same. You don't want me to come to your house, do that, right? Because I'll do it if you want me to.
After our sojourn in Sutcliffe, it was back to Nixon to buzz by the tribal headquarters to meet the current Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe Chairman, Stephen Wadsworth.
Fun fact, Nixon is where the first Indian agency was established when the federal government formed the Pyramid Lake Reservation, and that's why the tribe is headquartered there and not actually at the lake itself.
We sat down with Chairman Wadsworth to talk brass tacks, or more relevantly, steel chains, and to get even more understanding of the Burning Man community's impact on the area. Well, what can people do to be better citizens passing through here? What advice would you give to the community?
I would say tie down your loads. Make sure nothing falls off your vehicle, and I literally mean nothing. We don't want to see any trash along any of our roads. We don't want to see, one of the big ones is like with people dragging their chains from when they tow their vehicles, because those chains are running along the asphalt, damaging the road, creating sparks, which is in turn creating a fire hazard. This is a desert. Just because there's water here, there's very little trees, but when you look out into the desert, you see nothing but like cheatgrass, and that stuff is just a tinderbox waiting to go up. So when people are driving and they got their chains sparking along the road, it creates a very, very bad hazard. And if you're in the local area, you know about the fires we've had and about how much damage it does all over the countryside. And we want to mitigate as much as possible with that. And that only helps with people tying down their loads, making sure nothing's dragging. Don't be throwing cigarette butts out the window, because it's just all waiting to go up.
And I know some of those janky old RVs sometimes break down. If there's an accident, how should people respond to that?
We've got our law enforcement out there. We're going to have highway patrol out. They should respond by following what they say, because a lot of times what happens is an accident will happen, especially during the early stages, and then they will try to go around. Nobody's directing you to go around. You got traffic coming the opposite direction. It's a very dangerous highway because It's 2-lane.
Yeah.
One going north, one going south. For the entire trip out to Burning Man, you have 2 lanes total. And there is, for the majority of it, 0 shoulder. Shoulders are very steep, and it is a very dangerous highway.
And I guess if you go off on one of those shoulders, you're just damaging the road more, right?
Yes, you're just digging it in a little deeper and making it more dangerous for everybody. That is a state of Nevada problem. It is a state highway, and we've told them about it repeatedly. But of course, like everybody else, they're under their own budget constraints. But our number one thing is that, yes, it is a very dangerous highway. Another thing, too, is, like I said, water is everything for Pyramid Lake. It's one of those things where, like, we don't even need to list it anywhere on a strategic plan or anything. We wake up, and that's the first thing on just about everybody's mind is how much water is coming down the river and how much water is staying in the lake. It's trauma for us, I know, when we're driving out to Burning Man, because when you're driving out to Burning Man and you pass the Nixon area, there's that whole barren stretch of 25 miles where you see nothing but flat, dried up lake bed. And that only happened in the last 120 years. That's why we fight so hard, because we've seen what happens when they steal water upstream, and it's literally stealing water upstream from, 100 plus years ago. It's very, very rare, but we have had people come and they hook up their RV hoses into the lake and start trying to pump water out because they need water. Absolutely not. The water is not yours to take. That's kind of a crazy thing to think about, because it is water out in the middle of a desert. But again, you're on somebody else's land, you're on somebody else's property. And the water, just because it's there, doesn't mean you can take it. We fight to protect not only the water, but the reality of it is for the fish that are in the water. Mm-hmm. Our ancestral name is Quiwitakata, and that means fish eaters. Pretty literal translation because, hundreds of years ago, that's how we were known. We're not so much fish eaters anymore, but we're fish protectors. There's really not really a Paiute word for protector, but that's what we do now. That's what we've evolved into. The water's for nature, because it's not just us that rely on it. The animals rely on it, the deer, the antelope, the rabbits, the bighorn sheep that we've reintroduced. That's part of the job, too, is to educate people because they just assume, oh, there's water, we can use it. The one I do have to stress is the no nudity. We do not have nude beaches because it happens every Burning Man. We get so many visitors stop and they're out there in the buff. Sorry, guys, we just don't offer that here. We do have a couple of family beaches where we don't allow alcohol. Of course, if anybody's into fireworks, you can buy fireworks. We have spots along the lakes that are designated fireworks spots, so that's always an option.
Chairman Wadsworth also talked about something I think we're all familiar with in Black Rock City, the importance of reading the signs. And no, we're not talking about woo-woo signs from the universe. We're talking about the literal signs posted by the side of the road.
Everybody, take your trash home. If you are dropping off your trash, all of the tribal approved vendors that will be allowed to take trash should have a sign. And we're thankful for Burning Man. They actually gave us these signs that said that they are permitted by the tribe to take trash.
Yeah.
So if you're not seeing that sign, you could be dropping off trash on the reservation at somebody that's not approved to do so. So pay attention to the signs. We have various areas along the lake where people are not allowed to go.
And now we come to the last stop on our trip, the playa itself. How could it be otherwise? We were there, of course, to attend the Golden Spike ceremony. Every year, before Burning Man kicks off, a bunch of the people who build Black Rock City gather in the desert to hammer a little steel peg into the ground to mark the official kickoff of survey, of city building, all that. Now, this is not just any spot. It is the center of the man, the exact center where Black Rock City is going to spring up and where the survey is going to be centered. Now, this little ritual is kind of a big deal because it's basically the starting gun for building the whole wild city. And in a very sweet ritual, Dean Barlese, who you heard at the top of the show, is typically in attendance to give a Paiute blessing at the start of the ceremony. He was out of town this year, but he told us that this is what he usually says.
We're always asking Dina, our creator, give us all a good blessing. And we always mention Piarip, our Mother Earth, who have a sacred water, or the sacredness of water, and everything else, all that is life, from the grass to the trees to the animal. Basically, that's the blessing for everything. I pretty much say, just asking for a good blessing, that nothing bad happens to the people that's coming out, building, and that's going to enjoy themselves out there. That nothing really tragic happens to them.
Dean wasn't there, but 2 other members of the tribe were, and both of them took turns and came up and hit the spike. And one of them was gracious enough to give me a quick interview on the fly about where her identities as a tribal member and as a burner meet.
My name is Double D. I'm a tribal member from the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, and I am so enjoying this evening. These Black Rock people that make this happen are beautiful inside and out. I'm very honored to be here because they put 3 months every year of their lives out here. And I just want to say thank you all for taking care of Mother Earth, as we are all caretakers. We have to take care of Mother Earth, and these are the people to be around to do it.
Have you been coming to the burn for a while?
I've been here, this will be my 17th year. I've missed 2 years because of passings and family issues, but other than that, I wouldn't miss it again.
And do you come out here with other members of the tribe?
Yes, we do. There's probably about 12 of us, 10, 12 of us that come out in about 3 or 4 different trailers, and we all hang out, try to stay in the same vicinity. Come out here on Sunday morning, set it up, do the last minute shopping, and then come on back home. As for Paiute traditions, we say our prayers in the morning to the east. We say our good nights to the west. We do our nightly prayers, our morning prayers, but other than that, it's just, it's all about humans here. If you have an opportunity, always have your door to either your tent, your trailer, whatever, but always have it to the east. So that's when you wake up with all the purest spirit that you can have.
And thus, our road trip comes to an end. This concludes our visit to the home of the Numa. It's my sincere hope that we'll all have at least a slightly greater appreciation for the amazing people who've called this place home long before we ever showed up.
And remember, we have all kinds of links in the show notes to help you, dear listener, donate, support, and get involved with the Pyramid Lake Paiute. And for those headed to Playa, Comfort and Joy is running its annual food drive for the tribe. You can drop off all your non-perishable leftovers at Bunny's Tacos in Nixon. Look for the food drive signs and the big Dayglow flags. Google Map directions in the show notes.
And please, and thank you, don't forget about that leaving no trace part. It's important, people. And on that note, here's one more parting message from our friend Dean.
White man's thinking, don't leave it here.
That's it for this time around. The next time you hear these voices, it'll be in September, after the dust has settled from that dusty Black Rock City 2024. This podcast is just one example of the cultural work we do at Burning Man Project that is not supported by ticket sales to Black Rock City, but really made possible by donations to our 501c3. Help us continue to support community building around the world, to fund innovative art projects, foster learning and storytelling, and generally just keep the lights on and the fires burning year round, year after year. If you can make a gift of any size to support this work, just go to donate.burningman.org. Thanks to everyone who made this one possible. Our guests, Billie Jean Guerrero, Mervin Wright, James Phoenix, Chairman Stephen Wadsworth, Dean Barlese, Double D, and the entire Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe for not just putting up with us, but welcoming us into your world. Thanks to my co-pilot, Ali Wallner, my flight engineer, Michael Vav, and the whole ground crew back at HQ, Tyler, K-Bot, Action Girl, and DJ Toil. I'm Stuart Mangrum. Thanks, Larry.